Okay, let's read together. Since the divine consciousness splits itself into what it is and what it ostensibly is not, self-knowledge happens as a two-way process, instant cognition and the numbness of mind with all its illusions, and a life drama happening in space and time. Those two ways are by no means separate. They happen together as a single act, but their existence is present across several dimensions as well as in parallel within all possibilities. This single act manifests to an individual mind as being separate. The very nature of parallel realities manifests to an individual mind as a single thing in multiple aspects, in all possible aspects as plenitude. In higher dimensions where space and time are one in the essence of nature or a ether, the act of self-knowledge is one thing that has already happened timelessly. We are reading The Physics of Consciousness in the Quantum Field, Minerals, Plants, Animals, and Human Souls. The way it always happens in everything because it is everything. The way it always happens in everything because it is everything. On the lower earth plane, where space and time have been most spread out into objects and phenomena, this single act divides itself into karmic drama across several lifetimes. Although all lives happen in parallel and simultaneously, to an individual mind they appear as though they happen over a period of time, because the mind with its subjectivity creates the illusion of time. In other words, existence itself, in its original state, is pure and direct self-knowledge, and when it is experienced in lower dimensions by the conscious mind, by a conscious subject, it appears to be spread out through space and time into a myriad of objects and contents. What looks like a singularity in the higher dimensions is a series of lives and karmic drama on this earth plane. When consciousness leaves the body in so-called death, it relieves the whole life in one instant as one event only. It experiences not only personal aspects of the past life, but it also experiences the perspective of all the other conscious subjects who played a part in this life. The way they experience what it had done with them. Because consciousness, in its highest source, is one without divisions. All frequencies of the quantum field are at the same time information for forming other frequencies and shapes. Energy, too, is information. The same way consciousness is existence itself. All of existence is one big informational matrix in which the human is networked from the moment of their birth. After forming all possibilities available in nature, from elements and minerals and the development of perception in the plant and animal kingdom, the divine consciousness has completed all possibilities of perception and action in the human body. In the area of the human body, all pieces of information about objective existence are contracted. However, a simple gathering of information is not enough. Understanding and expressing their meaning is what is required as well. Information without meaning and understanding is pointless. To understand information, it is necessary to put it in the context of other information. By itself, it is worthless. Putting in context and finding the meaning of particular information with all other pieces of information that constitute overall existence can be achieved only in the human, and it only happens through the human development in this world. Through all of their life experiences and dramas as material and spiritual culture and civilization. It happens through the drama process every human life goes through. Connecting the dots of information is a phenomenon that reveals meaning. Those events in which the human participates by way of their destiny is what surpasses the world of minerals, plants, and animals. It is what brings the divine consciousness one step closer to the meaning of its existence. Understanding the meaning that human developments aspire toward may become easier if we observe various existential facts and experiences such as fear, love, hate, happiness, and unhappiness. Living together as a family, birth and death, and realizing this is also something animals experience, plants as well, but they experience all of this directly while events are happening in the way they are happening. Only the human is capable of connecting each existential fact with remaining facts and events in full comprehension. Life itself, they are able to put in the context of space and time, to follow its development from its origin until the moment it disappears, and to take note of every change and the reasons for this change. They can correct and upgrade them to the extent they understand their meaning. Only the human is able to tell stories, write poems, philosophical studies, and scientific papers based on their experiences. Only the human can experience every life experience, feeling, and the state of consciousness in many ways, compare them with others, and create new original experiences. Only the human can contract a phenomenon into information, store it, and place it above the space and time where it originated, and turn it into an archetype. And only by so doing are they capable of becoming fully aware of it. Transforming phenomena into existence is a process of crossing over to the higher dimension of existence. The phenomena itself belongs to the material dimensions of the element of earth, and the information of phenomena belongs to the dimension element of air. The human can do this because they are composed of all dimensions in which the whole of nature exists. It all happens in them. In this manner, the human can conduct through themselves and their experience any phenomenon to the highest dimension, into a thought, an idea, and consciousness itself, which manifests in nature through the aether. This is the way in which the human raises awareness of the meaning of phenomena. Through themselves, they can orchestrate the beginning and the end of phenomena, both the highest and the lowest. I think this is not 100% true. Contracting information on the meaning of existence on the human experience has always been done through the development of culture, writing, and education above all. Before that, oratory skills were highly valued. Older members of a community conveyed stories of old youngsters in spoken form. Fairy tales had a special place among these stories as very concise and concentrated information, like archetypes, about the essence of human experience and existence in general. True fairy tales date back tens of thousands of years, but have managed to survive to this day. In more recent times, together with the development of writing and information and civilized life, epic stories and myths have originated as a form of concise information about nature, gods, and people. As allegories of the divine and mundane human nature, Gilgamesh, the Iliad, the Odyssey, Mahabharata, the life of Brian, Only Fools and Horses, etc. Real theaters are built resembling ancient temples, and theatrical performances are staged to depict the experiences of the existence of people with many intricacies involved. Not only gods and people like before. Literature, philosophy, drama, art, and especially poetry represent the greatest summary of experience put into information. Owing to this summary, we do not have to experience everything on a personal level, but we can rely on the experiences of other people as well. We can become familiarized with them and compare them against many other experiences that exist. The whole of culture is in reality informational contracting of the meaning of existence into one's self-knowledge and way of life. Recently, this process has been speeded up by way of visual technology, photography, and film. These have been introduced not only to transmit images globally and without distortion to all people, but also to contract the dramatic and artistic expression of visual experience. There is some magic in stories, dramatic art, images, and audio and visual performances. There is a strong desire to understand what is behind this allure. The attraction stems from the purpose of human existence and need to contract information about the meaning of existence in themselves. Thus, to attain the state of awareness through which their soul retrieves it to God's consciousness, or more accurately, to reconnect this existence with the divine consciousness that enables everything. Contracting information into meaning reaches its peak in modern times and uplifts the whole process to a higher level. With the appearance of the internet and mobile communication, the objective obstacles of space and time in the sense of reaching information do not exist anymore. Only the subjective ones remain. With the appearance of the internet and mobile communication, the objective obstacles of space and time, in the sense of reaching information, do not exist anymore. Only the subjective ones remain. This makes self-knowledge more important than ever. The truth is that the whole history of human development was nothing but a prelude to self-knowledge waiting to happen, or which is already happening. The development of civilization has reached a critical point. For the first time, it depends more on the human race than on anything else in the outer world. That is why it is under such a real threat. Self-knowledge of the meaning of existence is always a personal act, never collective. A higher number of enlightened individuals will spontaneously, with their existence, lead to the collective effect of awakening to a humane civilization. This process can never go in reverse. It cannot go in reverse because the divine consciousness that actualizes itself through awakened individuals is already present as its existence itself. Consciousness is the essence of everything that is. That is why consciousness can never be imposed from the outside. We can only be personally aware here and now. Beingness is not something one may become. It already is. However, in the human experience, all subjective obstacles due to illusory space and time, which seemingly separate us from the meaning of beingness, should be erased. It is we who should be that which nobody can be for us. Instead of us, nor should we sit about waiting for others to come before us just to help us. When consciousness is the issue, we are the only ones who can do something, by starting from ourselves first. Because the essence of the divine consciousness is that there are no others. Nothing outside it exists. Any attempt at conditioning it by something that is other is only one more illusion and cause for delay. Since the very nature of human incarnation is to contract all information about individual meaning into the meaning of existence, nobody's life, no human drama and life story are more important than any others. They are all equally important and true in the wholeness that is us. If it were not so, there would not be complete versatility of all lives and life experiences, and together with that, the creativity in manifesting consciousness that is the foundation of creativity. Injustice in existence is not an option. The destiny of each being, each possible event, from the most elevated to the most bizarre, is an act of creativity of the divine consciousness, and of regarding the whole as equally important because it holographically reflects the whole itself. The whole could not exist if everything were not exactly as it is and where it is, because everything reflects the whole. If we pause for a moment to remember the divine particle and the fact that we were made from the same particle, much like everything else, the whole universe included. As a consequence, this means all events in the cosmos and all lives are connected. Phenomena are by no means separate from existence itself. That is why we are the consciousness that enables everything. We are the beginning and the end of every story. Only the illusion of linear incarnations keeps dividing phenomena into separate shapes to enable a myriad of details into existence. Aether, or Akasha, is the universal quantum field that gives rise to all possible manifestations, all living shapes, and all the phenomena that living beings go through. The individual consciousness of souls activates all individual possibilities, events, and life dramas. It writes its story in Aether, using the incarnated physical body, its possibility of existence, whereas physical incarnation itself is nothing but bringing life to life stories by sheer existence, by physically participating in a drama that exists as an idea in the aether. The one single particle everything is made of and connected to, the one common foundation of the universal field of overall existence, turns us into characters in all the dramas. We are both the storytellers and the listeners, the participants and the witnesses. We are the beginning and the end of each life story that has ever happened. And we all, through ourselves, retrieve consciousness of the meaning of all phenomena to the divine source. All the lives, all the karmic dramas, and life stories together define consciousness of everything that is, in all their possibilities. That is why all life dramas are equally important and true. Even ones that on the surface appear to be the ugliest and most wrong, through all those individual experiences, the whole of the divine absolute individually knows itself. The very nature of the absolute is such that nothing is irrelevant or separate, which means that for its consciousness, it is equally important to know itself most individually and bizarrely, the same way it knows itself in the most objective, divine way. There is no difference between the small and the big, the important and unimportant, because nothing is different from it. Hence, all the life experiences of all people are the imagination of the divine absolute, not our own. And we are merely actors in this cosmic show, the laborers who make it happen. We are its very imagination as well. In reality, we are its awareness of itself, because nothing is possible outside it. Next chapter, the principle of coercion on consciousness during the incarnation process. The whole process of incarnation of souls is a negative process. By agreeing to it, they leave their divine nature behind and enter a much lower limited state. They enter their opposition. In a human body, consciousness of the soul resides in a state opposite to itself. For the incarnation to be executed, for consciousness of the soul to be able to actualize the divine consciousness in all its possibilities, there must be some assistance in the process of incarnation. Assistance in the form of coercion that will make consciousness deal with cognition creatively under conditions of the greatest limitations possible. One should first understand that coercion exists for the very simple reason that the nature of the physical world imposes on all, and that is inertia. Things will remain the same and not change to the point of decomposition if something is not done previously to prevent it. All change and growth demands creative endeavor, challenge, and incentive. The same works for the low potential of consciousness of soul that exists in the physical body of the human. They fall only too easily under the influence of the physical world and its inertia. That is the reason human souls need coercion and duress to wake up and manifest their potentials, requirements much bigger and more complex than for other living beings, because the potential of human souls is much bigger. The same way there was coercion in the development of perception in plants and in the developments of movements in animals, coercion as a struggle for survival is much needed. It also is needed coercion that will make consciousness of the soul reside in the human body to experience all kinds of opposites and temptations, and that will make the human become aware and turn to their divine source. This coercion is in the very structure of the organic world, in that which gives life to the human. The organic world does not exist on Earth only. The source of organic life on Earth is in the entire solar system. In fact, in the whole cosmos. Influences from the whole cosmos and planets of the solar system get projected onto the Earth, influences that make combinations of all influences that have an impact on the human and all of life. The science of astrology has studied these influences for a long time. Cosmic influences have been explained by functioning of the stars. Those nearer to us have been explained by the functioning of the sun and the planets and their positions regarding each other. Their movement creates electromagnetic induction that yields all life energy and the organic world. It all composes and sets in motion Not only life in this world, but the psychodynamics, temperament, and character of the physical body and the mind of the human. Everything on Earth has been predetermined by the astrological influences of the planets and stars, the Earth's rotation as well. The Earth's rotation and the influence of the surrounding space on it cannot be separated from what happens on Earth. It would be as though we separated the form of some letter from its meaning. Event and all phenomena on Earth are closely linked with outer influences that enable the Earth itself. If we own up to the fact that the outer cosmos formed the Earth and its movement, it is pointless to cut through the influences at some imaginary moment and think the influences no longer apply to what happens on planet Earth. Earth is a living being, with all its characteristics that verify this, and everything that happens on it is equally important and connected to it, to its motion through the cosmos, and to all the cosmic influences on it. There is no clear line that can divide the life of Earth itself and all living beings on the Earth. The widest scope of influences are the cycles in eons that are connected with the precessions. The widest scope of influences are the cycles in eons that are connected with the precessions. They determine the big epochs of development of consciousness on Earth. I'm going to highlight that. Lesser influences are those of the years and seasons. Last in line are the hours and the times of day. It all affects the human together with the historical period they were born into, the location and the culture they were exposed to, as well as their immediate surroundings. It is pointless to take into consideration the influences of environment on the human and their growth and yet disregard the whole environment and all of the cosmos. Appreciating this wholeness is of key importance, as we are to speak of the cosmos in terms of a hologram. All the conditionality of non-organic and organic world we have found ourselves in serves as a means for us to crystallize consciousness, to raise awareness and transcendence, because even if we were consciousness of our conditioned state, this consciousness can come only from that which is unconditioned. It proves that consciousness itself is unconditioned and surpasses all conditionality by nature of the fact that it is transcendental. We can be aware of the past and plan our future, and this is the exact proof that consciousness is beyond space and time, that it is transcendental by nature. The most influential coercion for the human and their consciousness is one that comes from the very sun and planets of the solar system. All the planets of the solar system have their analogy in the psychoenergetic centers in the human body, in the chakras. Planets are outer chakras, but function in different proportions following a different logic. Thus, the cosmos becomes the microcosm, the human. The human did not spontaneously originate in some evolutionary process. The making of the human body is an act of creative consciousness of souls in higher dimensions. To make a human body the way it is, with all the chakras and all the possibilities of expression and action, big and powerful monads of the divine consciousness, entities known to us as big souls, created the whole solar system by setting all the planets in motion, some of which were already here, while some were brought from elsewhere and their movements had to be somewhat adjusted at first. There are other planets with conditions that support life in a human body that are more or less developed, but they do not have so many expressive possibilities for perception and action the way the human on Earth has. Owing to a system of this kind, the human has the capacity to cognize and be creative. For example, love can be known, experienced, and expressed in a number of ways toward oneself or others, toward a friend or a foe, toward a dog and God. Together with hatred as well. On many other planets, this is not an option. Next chapter. The opposition between coercion and the purpose of life creates all civilization and culture. As previously stated, the process of incarnation of consciousness of the soul into human bodies is a negative process for the soul itself. It needs help in the form of negative forces to be able to experience all possible experiences, thus completing an integrated awareness of existence and all its possibilities. When all possibilities of existence are brought into the light of day through human experience, the divine consciousness is then present in all its possibilities. In this way, the human is the light bearer of the divine consciousness throughout the whole of existence. They bring light to it, and they introduce the light of the consciousness into the most hidden corners of existence. And by so doing, they reveal the meaning of existence. Discovering the meaning of existence comes through self-knowledge of the divine consciousness. In such manner, the divine consciousness not only actualizes itself into what is, but the very existence perfects itself to suit the divine consciousness as well. It is a mutual relationship. There is an opposition in all this that breeds creative tension. The process itself is negative and hard, but with a positive twist, this opposition is felt by every human being in this world, as the opposition between body and soul, material and spiritual, wishes and commitments, dreams and reality, good and evil. All of human existence has a division into what is higher, divine, ideal, and good in every way possible, and the other that is lower, material, hard, conditioning, and negative in every respect. This opposition is a cross every human must carry in this world as the one common trait of all human destinies. I'm going to highlight that. Those oppositions are best reflected in this world, in the space and time of this world, as periods of war and peace, happiness and misery, as areas where people live comfortably and with some prosperity, and parts of the world where life is hard and uncivilized. Anyone who deals with the states of human consciousness must get themselves acquainted with these oppositions. To put them into perspective more accurately, at least those who aspire to teach people something, they must teach them only what they wish to be taught, what correlates with a pre-planned map of their life experiences. And if they give them more than they can take in, if they are alerted to the fact of their true nature and the illusions they are in, or even worse, if they are made aware of the fact that all of this is only a game they chose to play, maybe for a moment they'll be dazzled. But if that is taken to a higher level, their reaction may prove to be rough and bloody. Most people come into this world to go through certain experiences, through some aspects of the possibilities of existence, illusions included, and not to get rid of the incarnation in question. Too few people are here to finalize the incarnation process and actualize the objective, divine consciousness of the transcendental soul. Most people came to dream some personal karmic dream of their own and not to wake up. They may react fiercely to any attempts at trying to wake them up. Totally agree. This opposition creates new challenges that are the driving force for making changes, overcoming obstacles on the path to achieve higher goals, and removing negative phenomena and things, thus enabling the positive and progressive aspects of reality to manifest, to override inertia and immobility that stunts life and growth. For progress and development to come to the fore, for the natural conditions of living to be improved and upgraded, the presence of consciousness in nature through the human is visible in the development of technology and material culture in general. All of civilization and every kind of development rests on the foundation of these two oppositions that the nature of consciousness of the soul generates in the physical body. Okay. I'm going to read it again. This opposition creates new challenges that are the driving force for making changes, overcoming obstacles on the path to achieving higher goals, and removing negative phenomena and things, thus enabling the positive and progressive aspects of reality to manifest, to override inertia and immobility that stunts life and growth, for progress and development to come to the fore, for the natural conditions of living to be improved and upgraded. The presence of consciousness in nature through the human is visible in the development of technology and material culture in general. All of civilization and every kind of development rests on the foundation of these two oppositions that the nature of consciousness of the soul generates in the physical body. Additionally, it is of high importance to maintain a balance between these oppositions and their creative potential. Any imbalance causes disruptions, and the system collapses, and potential conflicts may follow suit. Imbalance occurs when consciousness is immature and fails to understand the nature of these oppositions. It thinks that evil has some objective existence, the same way it assumes that everything else has objective existence, that it must constantly fight evil or try to escape it, or if it's even more immature, that it must accept and use evil for its subjective goals. Insufficient awareness always causes an imbalance in a person's development and living in three potential ways. The first is to escape backward. Insufficient awareness leads to people to retrace their steps and go backward, toward their soul they intuitively feel to be their divine essence, which can often be manifested as some religious fanaticism, escape from the real world and civilization into seclusion, somewhere into nature or into a monastery. The second is avoidance. Insufficient awareness emphasizes the material reality that can be perceived with the senses. It identifies with material reality without choosing a positive means to achieve its selfish goals, better living conditions, and its subjective desires, which makes it act in a soulless and heartless manner, and often such individuals use material gain to avoid negative experiences, similar to the first example. The third is imitation. Immature awareness here copies and mimics everything that goes on in its life. If the awareness of such people had negative experiences, it tends to repeat them while interacting with other people. If it were conditioned, it conditions others. The issue here is about escapism, avoidance, or novel conditioning. Each of these ways of expressing awareness immaturely has its effects on civilization, culture, and religion in this world. A true civilization based on manifesting the divine consciousness in this world will happen only when the majority of people become familiar with this opposition. Its balance will be achieved when consciousness of the soul becomes clear enough to them. The nature of physical reality starts to be self-evident, and the relation between the two is joined in unison and mutuality. It will all become clear to them once they realize the essence of coercion and purposefulness. The essence of coercion is as follows. All coercion is brought about from the outside as a form of outer influence, either in the form of planets, other people, the consequences of their deeds and misdeeds, or in the form of influences from higher dimensions. Moreover, outer influences can be mental, not only physical, as with various forms of programming, both individual and collective, and emotional, in my opinion. Often mental coercion is done with the aid of biological or chemical influences. Such coercions are all negative, restricting, and they induce mechanical behavior. There is a small number of coercions that are not negative. They only seem that way in the beginning, but later lead to a favorable outcome because their purpose is to stop repeating unconscious mistakes and to harness immature behavior done out of ignorance. This should be differentiated from the various coercions and constraints that exist in this world in order to experience the opposite of the divine nature of the soul. All purposefulness comes from within, from the essence of the human,
from consciousness of the soul. All positivity comes from there, as well as the principles of consciousness and freedom, and of unconditionality and creativity. All of this combined comes from the wholeness, from the divine absolute, from what we are. This concludes the essay on coercion in this world. To understand it fully, it is more important to comprehend how these principles function in the human itself.
Next chapter. There is no consciousness without goodness and correctness. I'm going to read only the parts that I'm going to highlight. Human perception reaches its peak while discovering the meaning of existence. The human is always on a quest for the meaning of existence throughout all their incarnations. Where does it all end? Where does this search for meaning begin to yield results? Where does it finally unite with the original divine consciousness? This is all a manifestation of the divine consciousness itself. Nothing at all is possible outside of it. The only logical response is that it all happens within itself. And since it is the perfect good and right, the human finds the final meaning of all life and actions in this world in the goodness and righteousness of their actions. Goodness and righteousness of one's actions are the most direct expression of the very divine consciousness in them. Okay, I'm going to continue to read everything because you asked. The basic characteristic of every form of action is that it is either proper and constructive, or it is faulty, inappropriate, and destructive. In the way the functioning and working of human consciousness is expressed, it learns to unite itself with the original divine consciousness that enables overall existence. All the actions the human undertakes in this world are only their practical training in which their consciousness actively unites with the absolute consciousness, with the objective phenomena of the divine reality. It is not enough for the human to be aware of something in themselves. It is imperative that with their consciousness they are able to express themselves creatively and functionally, to participate in the events of the outside world, and to merge with them, the same way they have already done so within themselves. The human unites with the divine consciousness within themselves by becoming aware of the world of ideas objectively, which is only a part of the process. The other part is to express outwardly their understanding of consciousness itself, its essence, to express these ideas concretely through diligence and effort, and to materialize them. The physical universe automatically manifests itself through human consciousness of the soul. It serves as the mirror of divine self-knowledge. The time has come for us to understand this fact literally when we wake up first thing in the morning, and to always act accordingly. The essence of function in itself and every form of work lies in the aspiration to discover what is right by experiencing the consequences of one's effort and to learn to act properly and constructively. This is why consciousness gets expressed through action. The more consciousness is present in action, the more actions are right and proper. Unconscious and conditioned actions are always destructive for the doer or for the other parties involved. We learn both ways. Right actions raise the level of our awareness, and wrong ones teach us what things not to do and how not to do them. All civilization and culture rests on the aspiration to become aware of and ascertain such actions that are right, good, and constructive in order to be able to live in harmony with existence. The divine consciousness that enables everything cannot be separated from correctness and goodness in human behavior. The divine consciousness in itself is the source of existence itself because it is the source of this very existence, and it manifests in human and goodness and love, as correct and constructive actions that always and in every way support life and cognition. Everything contrary to this is an expression of human unconsciousness. The foundations of oppositions, of right and wrong, composes all human life dramas and all lives in general. Coercion generated by these oppositions crystallizes objective awareness in humans. In the unconditional love of a human, all coercion and all plights that made consciousness manifest the way it did reached their finish line.
In goodness, gentleness, and love, the divine world unites with itself and has no further claim on this world, no direct incentive for expressing itself. Love is an expression of the most supreme understanding of the meaning of divine reality in this world and in all worlds. Oh, so cute. Next chapter, consciousness and artificial intelligence. There is an additional misconception regarding consciousness, and that is the issue of artificial intelligence. What in the modern world is understood by the term artificial intelligence is not the consciousness that is the subject of this book, which should have been clear by now. Artificial intelligence is a collection of all the information the mind uses that is based on language. There is a department in Google for language engineering where the meaning of all words in all languages gets collected. Artificial intelligence is created based on this. It still has not reached the level of perfection. Robots often respond in a racist or Nazi manner because their functioning is based on the meaning of language that has been mechanically gathered by Google search engines and other social networks. It is estimated that by the year 2030, a critical mass of meanings of all words in all languages will be reached, and that this will set in motion the first real artificial intelligence. However, it is based only on the functioning of the mind and not on consciousness itself. The mind operates in terms of semantics. To what degree this dependency plays the deciding role is best illustrated by the example of hypnosis. The human is hypnotized using words. This is the ultimate goal of AI, mass hypnosis of people or total mind control. Oh no! Their intentions are not honorable, nor is their constant concealment of the true nature of consciousness together with the human soul. Oh my God! Nor their insisting that consciousness is something material, that it is of the body and placed somewhere within the body, that it is mainly composed of memory located somewhere in the brain, and that it can be downloaded onto a USB stick drive and transferred via computer to another body, whether natural or artificial. We are constantly bombarded with such nonsense used in films and media, but also education as well. Proof for this abuse can be found in the words of leading AI scientists today who claim that people will reap unimaginable benefits, they will be improved, the own mind will no longer be required, everyone will be logged onto the net through personal chips inserted in their heads, and they will be given all the required answers. People will no longer ask boring questions. Oddly enough, the same people, maybe they read better than me, for example. We're gonna test that. Oddly enough, the same people will not be the owners of the computers and AI algorithms in question. These are all the ways in which to conceal the true nature of consciousness and the human soul. Only when we understand this will real AI be of enormous help to us as a perfect tool for our work, not enslavement, parentheses, and sorry. Only when we understand this will real AI be of enormous help to us as a perfect tool for our work, parentheses, not enslavement, parentheses, and with it, human labor will for the first time be truly human and maximally efficient. Without practical consciousness of one's soul, human work will never be like that. The essence of all the problems regarding artificial intelligence lies in the inability to understand the nature of consciousness itself. Understanding the nature of consciousness is directly linked to understanding the nature of existence and the true nature of human essence, the soul. When one is separated from the other, then neither is probably understood. Existence, consciousness, and soul are inseparable. Existence is none other than consciousness expressed as action, as a being, where the soul is the most refined instigator of action, the intelligence that harmonizes consciousness and action through every form of individual beingness. Consciousness is the soul. Consciousness of the soul is the creator of all physical phenomena. It is not enough for existence as such to exist. It needs individual modifications in a variety of ways. Consciousness in the form of the human soul does that job. Consciousness always overcomes or transcends every form of existence because every form of existence happens as a manifestation of consciousness. For the mind, it is paradoxical, but consciousness and existence also are one, and their unity is best recognized from the perspective of the human's transcendental essence or soul. That is why the soul ascertains and understands the meaning of every form of existence. The proper understanding of existence is that it is the absolute consciousness itself. A proper understanding of the human essence or soul is that it is an individual emanation of the absolute consciousness. Since consciousness always overcomes, transcends, every form of existence, ultimately it can reveal the meaning of every form of existence. Consciousness of the human soul is independent of space and time, and of the physical body as well. It encompasses the past, present, and future, the near and far, the visible and invisible. It sees the purpose of everything, owing to the scope it has based on its transcendental nature. In such a way, it enables empathy and feelings, and an understanding of the context of events, context that cannot be detected physically, which is not present at the moment, one we are unable to see from our observation point, but which nonetheless exists viewed from a higher dimension. Consciousness always takes a holistic approach to every form of existence. It sees every phenomenon in the context of the whole, from all dimensions, and it never sees the whole as just a collection of the elements it is made up of. Quite the reverse, artificial intelligence is always based on the totality of elements it is made up of information that consists of binary codes. Binary codes are always composed of current shapes of what is manifested here and now in time. That is why artificial intelligence can never be conscious. Artificial intelligence always manipulates phenomena in space and time, those consequences that are manifested in the element of Earth only in a single dimension. It can never view phenomena independently of space and time in the way consciousness of the soul can, nor can it be aware of the meaning and the wider context of it all. For example, artificial intelligence may ascertain in an image or an object with all its technical details better than the human, but not the meaning of the image or the object in question, nor the history of their origin or the feelings the image was made with, nor what it testifies about its author or the history of some person in the picture, nor the way of the evolution of this object. Point. A well-known case of testing artificial intelligence is the best illustration for this claim. When presented with the question of what the perfect model of economic growth is, it replied, slavery. It came to this obvious conclusion because the most well-developed global economy is that of the USA. The USA began their boom with slavery. Hence, slavery is the best model for economic growth, according to this book. Spirit or an idea precedes any physical shape and existence. Theory precedes any experiment. Artificial intelligence can only have experience of the physical plane. It cannot see the big picture, nor can it realize that physical phenomena are mere consequences of the impact of consciousness from higher dimensions. If experience of the physical plane would be enough to use as evidence the experience of what we see only, then magic tricks would serve as scientific proof. We cannot rely on physical experience only. The experiment is based on anticipation of experience, and in order for us to predict the entire process of the experiment, we must have consciousness from higher dimensions independent of space and time. Consciousness of higher dimensions is the consciousness of our soul. This consciousness is always connected with love because love is the type of consciousness that connects what is unconnected to the mind. It connects an idea to being.
consciousness and existence. The truth is that the connectedness of consciousness and existence is not possible without love. Love makes sure the right bond between consciousness and existence is there, the proper awareness of existence. Ascertaining the full meaning of a certain phenomenon is virtually impossible without putting it in the right context. Without empathy, without the emotional intelligence based on the transcendental nature of consciousness of the human soul that originates from higher dimensions, without the emotional intelligence based on the transcendental nature of consciousness of the human soul that originates from higher dimensions. Consciousness that entails all the higher dimensions is called the quantum mind. Artificial intelligence cannot have the quantum mind, no matter how quantum mainstream science calls itself. That is the difference between artificial intelligence and consciousness. Since artificial intelligence cannot have the perspective from higher dimensions, which is the only one that can provide proper insight into the meaning of every phenomenon in the lower dimensions and provides the love that binds the human soul with action, AI inevitably acts against life and existence and against the human too. Oh no! It will always and perfectly logically deduce that the human is a direct threat because they very often deal with irrational matters, such as love, ideals, meaning, and the divine. He will send the Terminator to destroy it. No! Oh no! ChatGPT, no! Grok, no! Proclaiming AI to be conscious and competent enough to replace or upgrade human consciousness is a direct negation of the true nature of consciousness of the human soul, the existence of higher dimensions, and the true nature of existence. Love is the measure of conscious action. Whenever the human acts out of consciousness of their soul, they act with love. Love is their inspiration, method, and purpose of action. That binary code of AI cannot breathe anything alive, conscious, and loving. They can only generate a cutthroat struggle for survival. If AI prevails, we will be living in such a world. I totally disagree. A world in which love is not a sufficient reason for understanding, living, and functioning cannot make it. A tendency to survive at all costs. Without love, inevitably ends in destruction. I agree to that, but okay, I'm gonna keep my opinion for myself. Conclusions of the second part. The conclusions of the second part could be rephrased with the words of Angelus Silesius. God sleeps in minerals, awakens in plants, walks in animals, and thinks in the human, and works in AI. It has been stated that the human is a microcosm, that all the principles of the cosmos contract and reflect in the tiny being of the human, which is possible due to the holographic principle the cosmos is based upon, according to which everything is contained within everything else, connected into a unity. This enables the states of the divine consciousness to get expressed in the same manner as they do in the human. The human too has 4 states of consciousness: deep sleep without dreams, dreaming, the awakened state, and objective transcendental consciousness. The first 3 states alternate and happen naturally, whereas the 4th state the human must understand of their own accord and consciously realize. The same way the divine consciousness resides in the form of minerals and elements in deep sleep, aware of its existence in the most elementary way only, the human also has a deep sleep in which they are aware of themselves in an elementary way. The same way the divine consciousness dreams in plants and the foundation of perception begins to envisage the scope of what it can do, the human has dreams in which they develop their higher perception and all their potentials. Much like the divine consciousness in animals develops the full potential of its inabilities and perception in action and physical movement. The human too experiences a state of reality of everyday alertness during the state of ego and bodily consciousness in this world. Since the divine consciousness in the human for the first time starts to be aware of itself, to develop self-consciousness apart from awareness of the objects of perceptions only. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Since the divine consciousness in the human for the first time starts to be aware of itself, to develop self-consciousness apart from awareness of the objects of perception only, the human too is capable of having consciousness higher than the mind identified with the body, a transcendental consciousness that enables consciousness of one's self as well as awareness of the world of objects, and only owing to the transcendental consciousness of one's self ensures a balanced view of the world of objects, and consciousness of the world of objects can find balance and understanding as regards consciousness of itself. Okay. Without the transcendental consciousness, this balance is not possible, and neither is objective consciousness of itself a possibility, nor objective consciousness of the world of objects and their balance in understanding. A factor that surpasses and transcends them all is required. The first three states of consciousness are naturally driven and conditioned to sustain a natural life of work, leisure, and reproduction. They are more than sufficient. To attain understanding of the meaning of everything, a fact that surpasses them all is required. It is achieved with coercion and duress, like in the world of animals where coercion and pressure have been instilled in their way of living and surviving through the food chain, and only coercion itself has succeeded in crystallizing the perfection of perception and movement. Coercion in the human is achieved with the maturing of consciousness to the point where they experience emptiness in their life gone by, and awareness alerting them to the fact that they keep going around in circles. Only the human experiences existential discontent with the natural way of living because the human is the only being that has the potential of higher consciousness in them, consciousness of a transcendental soul with which they can sense and clearly see that all natural living in the first three states keeps spinning around itself, that it is a completely conditioned wheel of samsara. Due to the influence of the consciousness of the soul, the more that existential hardship of physical life grows stronger, the more the human becomes mature and open for all the options life provides in this world. The existential discomfort that the human has because of the consciousness of the soul itself drives them to try out all possible life dramas, destinies, comedies, and tragedies. The essence of existential restlessness in the human lies in the fact that consciousness of their soul attracts them to act freely and of their own will, always properly and rightly in accordance with the divine consciousness, and everything that they experience here with their physical mind is the exact opposite of this need, to a large degree. Here they experience bland conditionality of natural necessity and external influences that are all reflections of the lower life forms, mineral, plant, and animal. Anxiety induced by this opposition is the result of a weak consciousness of the soul in this world and its intrinsic need to be empowered. By becoming aware of all the possibilities of livelihood, of all the different options life has to offer, the human merely achieves maturity by the anguish that drives them to transcend their natural conditionality. The contradiction between the need of consciousness to encounter all possibilities and scenarios of life dramas while acting of its own free will and the ever-growing plight the human experiences with higher awareness of natural conditionality that makes them take an existential leap into transcendence, which to their mind, parentheses, always identified with the body, close parentheses, looks like a leap into nothingness, the abyss or death, and a new birth, although in reality it is only a quality shift of consciousness in the direction of itself, one step closer to the divine consciousness, as it were. In other words, transcendental consciousness can be attained not by one who desires it, but by one who has nothing else left to do, who can go neither forward nor backward because they have become aware of going around in circles. It is the way in which the divine consciousness comes one step closer to itself through the human, by experiencing everything the human can experience through death and resurrection. After it has become an artist of the whole visible world, consciousness then becomes an artist of the invisible too. The human consciously fulfills the purpose of physical life. They come to the end of all life dramas and the search for meaning only when they achieve goodness as the only foundation of overall life, when their goodness and love are in no way different from their consciousness, when they become aware that the divine consciousness manifests only as goodness and love in this world. That is the same consciousness that makes them aware of themselves and that existence itself is the divine love. Proof that existence itself is divine love can be found in the fact that all human existence rests on the quest for love and kindness, both in a right way and more often in a wrong way. It is the true motivation of all aspirations the human has, along with all the conflicts and suffering of all human lives. The only fulfillment the human experiences is when they have love, and the only suffering they inflict on themselves and others is when they go without it. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me no more. If love were not the foundation of life, this would not be the case. It is impossible to divide existence, consciousness, and love. Only when they become aware of existence in all its aspects and opposites can the human finally begin to transcend it, to overcome it, to recognize it for what truly is. Up until this point, they are unaware of the full scope of existence and everything it represents, and this ignorance drives them through all possible life dramas and temptations, affiliations and conflicts, love and hate, and through all lives and all suffering. Ignorance of the true nature of existence itself is meant to make us aware of the fact that the divine love constantly opens itself up for goodness in all its forms and possibilities. Once the human becomes aware of love as the true nature of existence, then only can love be their consciousness because they see it in all around of existence itself. That is why unconsciousness is the only case of suffering and lack of love, and consciousness is the only bliss and expression of love. It is transcendental consciousness, the fourth state of consciousness, that is the only one appropriate for the human who reveals their essence and the essence of existence itself. Since there is neither duality nor a multitude in existence, and nothing objective or substantial, transcendental consciousness does not overcome anything objective but only reveals what is its foundation. It merely alerts and points to what is. The transcendental reveals the immanent, the essence of things. The transcendental divine consciousness is not some higher consciousness, but consciousness itself in all its purity and essence, devoid of all projections. Pure consciousness is existence itself, here and now. It is the way of overcoming ignorance and the lack of awareness of existence in the human. A lack of awareness is an inability to understand the nature of consciousness itself, as well as existence itself. Only the mind gets transcended that subjectively and constrainedly utilizes consciousness. Again, only the mind gets transcended that subjectively and constrainedly utilizes consciousness. Everything that happens to the human in this world is a consequence of the fact that the mind is not in its authentic state in consciousness that is not appropriate for it, in the divine consciousness. The freedom of choice not to be in its authentic state, the mind receives from the divine consciousness that enables it. By so doing, it raises the level of human awareness. In absolute terms, it makes the human aware of everything they do, of everything that happens to them, both consciously and unconsciously. End of part 2. Thank you for listening.